Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And thank you for having me here this evening. My family and I, we just came directly from Kentucky. 6-hour drive straight into your Naperville Masjid parking. We were on a short spring break. It was supposed to be longer, about 10 days, then it was shortened to 7, then to 3 days because the date changed. We were going to stay until the end of the weekend. And so it was just 3 days. But I want to say two things about that. Number one, we were mostly in southern Illinois, and that sounds like the least exotic place on earth to go for spring break or for anything, but we were pleasantly surprised. And I'm saying this because you guys are from the Chicago suburbs, you and your families, if you're looking for a short trip, go to southern Illinois. I'll tell you why. They have beautiful mountains, hills, called Shawnee National Forest, that you might think that you need to go to Tennessee or the Appalachians or something to experience. You know, the rock formations, think Starved Rock times 5. Then they have these beautiful rolling hills, farmlands, you know, the cows, the horses. We actually stayed on a farm. It started off as a cabin thing that we wanted to do, and then we switched to a farm, and it worked out. It's beautiful. It had a pond, you can fish there. The people that live there are pretty interesting. I don't think they've ever seen anybody as dark as me before. We had a little chats with them here and there. They kind of were a little standoffish, you know. But they were nice. They were nice. Once sort of they get over their first primal sense of fear that they have from the stranger. And I talked to the lady who was cleaning the Airbnb, and I said, "Where are you from?" She said, "We're from here." And I said, "Do you like being from Illinois?" Because she goes to Kentucky a lot across the Ohio River for her shopping. She's like, "I like being from southern Illinois, but not from Illinois." I'm like, "Why?" "That we're Republicans." Okay. What does that mean? You're Republican, so what? But you know what it means. It means that they're, you know, God, country, gun, Bible type of thing. And so we'll touch a little bit about sort of that whole dynamic. But the last thing I'll say on that is people like that, we tend to caricature them much as they tend to caricature us. You know, they see us and they think oppressed or terrorists or not necessarily that far, but maybe at least foreign, you know, a rival religion. But once they get to know us, when they do, they find not just normal people, but wonderful people many times. And as I got to know these people, they were really kind and generous and sweet. And they had their churches, they didn't have their mosques, but they prayed in their way and they're religious, and I value that, and they had strong family values. They're probably MAGA, but not every single MAGA apparently is a crazed individual. They just want to live a certain way, and this country has different currents and different cultures, subcultures, not everybody's the same. The point is there's so much noise and there's so much talking over each other and so much otherization and essentialization to the worst that we think that identity or our identity for them has to offer, and it's just a silly, daft, low IQ way to live. And that's my message to the Muslims and to the whites, as Dave Chappelle would call them, right? To the so-called WASPs. Anyway, having said all that, CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, or Cair Chicago, is a civil rights organization. It is the largest Muslim civil rights organization in the United States. Its mission is to defend our civil liberties and civil rights per the Constitution, to fight bigotry, and I really insisted on putting that in the mission statement because there is a fight factor in our work, and I want to own it and embrace it. We love the fight factor. We're not just here to defend. We're going to fight you, we're going to hunt you down, we're going to come after you, we're going to give you not a very happy time. If you're a bigot or if you're somebody who's an Islamophobe, that's part of our mission, it's part of what we would like to do. And we promote education, back to the nice part. We promote education. But the fight part is the part I like. And I like it because, not because I'm some kind of tough guy, but because I hate bullying. I've always hated bullying, you know. I didn't experience it personally that much. There were attempts. It didn't go very far. But I've witnessed bullying, right? And I don't like it. I think it's very unjust. Whether a country bullies a country, or a kid bullies a kid, or a community bullies a community, or the media bullies, whatever it is, that really is the story for us. When we see these large corporations tell Muslims that they can't have certain rights because they're Muslims, that's bullying. When the government comes after our people at airports, or the FBI is knocking on their door to ask them questions that they shouldn't be asking them. These are not investigations. They're not criminal investigations. They're asking general questions. You're not in trouble. We're not investigating you. We just had general questions about Syria. We had general questions about Waziristan. We had just some general questions about Somalia. Well, brother, if you have general questions, you can hit ChatGPT or you can Google it. You don't come to my community members and knock on their door for your questions. And that's what we tell the FBI out front. So those types of things are bullying, various forms of bullying. And in a nutshell, we're an anti-bullying shop. And so sometimes with the bullies, you defend those who are being bullied, but other times you kind of have to come after the bullies, and you have to, I don't want to say humiliate, because now we're in a mosque, we want to be nice, but you want them to understand, you want to break their hubris. That's really important. Because the arrogance and the sense of supremacy is the basis of the bullying. There are two bases to bullying. One is the inferiority complex of the victim. So you have to play along. For the bullying to work, you have to play along. You have to believe you're less. And then for the person who's doing the bullying, and again, this could be civilization to civilization, they have to believe they're better. They have to be with a sense of supremacy. And so it was the British versus us Africans and from Egypt, whatever, right? And the only way it worked is if both sides play their part. But the moment one side doesn't, we can't control them, we can control ourselves at the very least, right? So at the very least, we have to rid ourselves of any sense of inferiority. To the contrary, we have to rekindle our sense of pride, not arrogance, not supremacy. We're not going to go there, although we could, given our history. It's a beautiful, strong history, but we're not going to do that. We're going to simply remember and center the pride that we have in this wonderful top-level civilization that we all have as Muslims. And there are many different flavors to it, from Central Asia to Southeast Asia to Southwest Asia to South Asia to the Middle East to North Africa to the Saheli region to Sub-Saharan Africa to Europe and the Balkans, and then the various transnational communities with the migrant movements in Europe, even in Russia and Tatarstan, all the way east, as far east as Yakutistan in the Soviet Union, Russia, the former Soviet Union. So many beautiful Muslim civilizations with an S. And all of those, they span so many countries, so many continents, so many different races, and so many epochs and eras in history. And for someone to come along, some hick, with all due respect, and to look at my religion or to look at my civilization and think it's inferior, you know what I mean? They're going to talk about Islam like I have to prove something to you. And that's our language now. It's like, listen, brother, I don't have to explain anything to you. If you don't like it, don't be it. I might be generous. I might educate you, but that's out of my generosity, but I owe you nothing. I don't need your validation, and I don't have to bend over backwards for you to accept me. I don't need you to accept me, but you're going to respect me. You're going to respect my community. You're going to respect our rights. You see the difference? And again, we have to walk the balance. This shouldn't tip into arrogance. But look, I'm going to treat everybody with respect and kindness. I'm demanding the same back. I don't understand everybody, quite frankly. I look at some Hindus and I go, okay, I don't get what you're doing. I look at some, Jews, and they're doing something at the temple or the wall. I don't get that. Some of their rules, I don't get that. Christians, some of their beliefs. God died, okay. But he came back 3 days later. Well, that's not really death, but okay. It was like a nap, coma. I don't know, it was 3 days. It wasn't death. It wasn't death, I'm sorry. But whatever, okay, But you know, at the end of the day, I'm going to respect your right to be that, and I'm going to have the depth to go, there might be something beautiful that you can get out of this, even though I don't agree with your beliefs, truly. There might be something beautiful that you can find in your faith. I can see it. Certain qualities in the Hindu civilization and Christian, Jewish traditions. So that's the same thing I require. I don't need you to believe everything I believe in as a Muslim. I don't have to give you the Quran. When I joined Cair, they were giving out Qurans. I stopped that. I'm like, no. We don't need to give people Qurans. You don't give, the ADL does not pass out the Torah in order to fight anti-Semitism. Like, I'm going to wait for everybody to convert to Islam or to like Islam before my rights are respected? That's a given. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the mentality has to change for us. We have to have a sense of confidence in ourselves, a sense of assertiveness, a sense of value, of our diversity, of its beauty, of our history, of our culture, of our values most of all, and I'll get into that in a little bit. And then second, when we have that, we stand strongly on that in order to face any challenges, including attempted bullying, including supremacy, including otherization, and it is very loud right now once again. The loudest it ever was in my career was when it began, post 9/11, for obvious reasons. But right now it's as loud as that time, if not more. And if the reasons are not so obvious, it's because post-Gaza, two things had to happen. As Americans began to realize that they've been lied to, that Zionism is a problem, that Israel is a problem, that they kill children, that they eradicate communities and demolish towns, and that they commit genocide with our tax dollars, with our diplomatic backing, with our economic backing, with our military backing. Meanwhile, those who promise America first are America last, and they're Israel first. And not only are they taking our tax dollars into these criminal actions, but they're denying us access to healthcare and education and things that we deserve as citizens. So as people began to get angry and as they couldn't really censor social media the way they could corporate media, they had to get into fifth gear and do two things in order to stave off the clear organic anger against this whole project. So the first thing they had to do, or they needed to do strategically, was to bring back the focus on anti-Semitism. So we're the victims, meaning them, right? They needed to be victims quickly. Quick, let's be victims again, quick. The Holocaust has been a couple of generations. Let's bring it back. Let's talk more about it. Anybody who's talking about Israel, anybody who's talking about, that's anti-Semitic. You can't do that, right? And so they really, you'll hear a lot of anti-Semitism. And this isn't just me talking, guys. I mean, universities, Northwestern, whom we were suing, by the way, they had two sets of standards, one for Muslims, one for Jews. 84 complaints to the administration, nothing happens. The other side, they talk about, oh, we feel unsafe on campus because somebody said from the river to the sea. And that's genocidal for us, okay? But the person saying it has made it clear that that's not what they're saying. And they deserve the right to be able to explain their own words and what they mean, because they're the ones saying them. And they haven't ever, not one person that I know of on any campus who's protested or rallied or said that statement has ever said that it means eradicating Jews. But that's what they want to pretend it means. That's what they want it to mean. That's what they need it to mean, because they need anti-Semitism. They want anti-Semitism in order to use it as a shield against the criticism of Israel. So that they need it. And a lot of times when somebody comes to me and goes, I'm not an Islamophobe. I respect Islam. I respect your prophet. I respect the Quran. I just don't agree. I go, stop. Great start. I'm good with that. I'm never going to go, oh, no, but you are. If they say they're not, great. Half the time they tell me they are. Not half the time, all the time. And they're proud. Like that idiot Randy Fine, the congressman who compares Muslims to dogs, he's proud to be an Islamophobe. He's not hiding it. He's not denying it. He's not whitewashing it. And so are the 55 members of Congress who are part of this so-called anti-Sharia law caucus, which is a dumb little caucus because there is no such thing as Sharia law being enforced on anybody. Sharia law, quote unquote, that's not even a term we use day to day, But really what it means is how we marry, how we bury, how we eat, how we, it's your community and personal laws. And every religion has them. You have canon law in Christianity, you have, forget what it's called. What is it called in the Jewish tradition? Halakha? You have that. When they get circumcised, when they eat kosher, when they wear the kippah, that's all halakha. And so what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Nothing. It's just a scare. So that Sharia scare is part of the other tool they have. So one is to play up anti-Semitism because they need it. And the second is to shift the focus from Israel as the bad guy, which everybody's starting to understand, to a new bad guy. And who's going to be the bad guy? Well, the most obvious, low-hanging fruit. We've been there before, not too long ago. Let's rekindle that little thing that we did, the Islamophobia cottage industry. And so Sharia law is a big part of that. That's so 2003. You guys weren't around at that time. I was. That is so 2003. But they're back with that. And if you haven't heard about that, it is something. I mean, they're trying to shut down Cair in Florida and in Texas. They've actually made not so much laws, but edicts signed by the governors that declare Cair terrorist organizations in Texas and Florida. They've tried to shut down the EPIC program that Sheikh Yasser Qadi is doing with some community members, which is basically just a little subdivision with some homes, but also centers and clinics and things like that for the Muslim community. You have that in other communities. In the Bronx, you have that with the Jewish community. You have it in other places, but that's Sharia law. So they're playing up this fictional narrative to scare Americans, and you'll see social media just marinating in that narrative, both narratives, right now. And so that's what we're seeing, and obviously, you would have thought that after Gaza, there would be a reckoning. You would have thought that, like we saw in Bosnia, there would be a war crimes tribunal. Back then for Karadzic and Milosevic, you would have it for Netanyahu and the others who were with him. And yet, here they go again in Iran. And they're bombing another Muslim country. And the United States now is actually heavily involved, almost as a mercenary. And that's at the heels of a genocide. And at the same time, look, when Hitler did it, when Stalin did it, when others did it in history, they just said, look, we can do it because we're better, and we're strong, and we don't care. But when you do something like that, and then you go, oh no, it's because we're good. We're doing it because we're good. And these are just so evil, so bad, that we need to, that's the moral thing to do. That's the part that gets me. Like, I understand supremacy. I understand empire. We've had them all over history. But very, very seldom have you had might and empire at the same time try to justify through morality. And that's what you have with the United States and Israel today. They're killing children in front of your eyes. But they go, that's the moral thing to do, because there was a terrorist hiding behind that clinic that you don't see, but we see, or in the basement somewhere in the school. And that justifies the collateral damage because, hey, war, people died. And the difference between us and them, see, we're moral, because we're trying to get the one terrorist behind the 2,000 kids. But they're trying to get the 2,000 soldiers that we have through killing, the one soldier that we have through killing 2,000 kids. They target the innocent. For us, the innocent are collateral damage. Even though the innocent that Muslims kill, like let's say whoever's fighting back, 5% of what they kill. But numbers don't matter because it's intention. But even the intention is BS. Because they target, obviously. If it's a school, what do you expect to happen? If it's a hospital, what do you expect to happen? And it goes on and on. To the point that we're here for tonight, action, right? You have awareness, and we've been talking awareness, now action. The awareness is to understand what is happening around you, to understand what you're up against, but to also couch it in its proper place. So I began with what? I began with a vision of what can be, which is we get to set the tone and the parameters around relationships. We get to redefine what it means to engage MAGA or to engage some redneck in Kentucky, right? We get to imagine the opportunities and the possibilities, and we get to be in control. We're not playing victim, we're not playing catch up, we're not playing reactionary. That's one thing. The other is to understand that where problems exist, we need to fully audit and understand their nature and be ready to reply and apply our values in that context. Because you can't have other kids like you in other spaces getting indoctrinated and getting mobilized into action that affects you, and you're sitting here, I'm not saying that's the case, clueless about it, going about your daily things, thinking religion is just rituals and memorization and reflection on whatever historical narratives that have happened in the past. What about today? What about the future? What about understanding our context? That's part of what you need to do as Muslims. Because at the end of the day, think about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. So those two always come together, and they're two sides to the same coin, and that's part of that value system I want to spend a few minutes talking about. The first very value we have is Iman. That's what really sets us apart, if we understand it correctly. Because many people claim faith, but for us it's more than faith, it's trust. Faith, belief is to say, I believe God exists. This is God, this is His name, this is the nature of God, that's one thing. But really for us, it's faith, in meaning trust, not belief. What does that mean? If it was belief, if it was the profession or the professing that God exists, then Iblis would be a mu'min. Because believe it or not, Iblis, the shaitan himself, did not deny the existence of God. He acknowledged and asserted the existence of God. But we can't really be in a situation where the definition of a mu'min is Iblis. So we have to understand what is the difference between a mu'min and Iblis. So it's not the belief, it's the trust. Where he failed is where Iman is. He failed to trust in God. He acknowledges God. He knows He exists, but he doesn't trust Him. So that's where Iman is. How much do you trust God? Don't tell me I believe in God. Good for you. How much do you trust God? That's what Iman is. And now it's a whole different answer. Because if I say, do you believe in God? That's an easy answer. It's a mindless answer. You've been brought into it. You've been brought up into it. I believe in God. Great, you're a mu'min. How much do we trust in God? We all have to audit our Iman. That's what that means, because that can go up and down. You can want something so badly, then when it doesn't happen, you forget that it's okay with God, because God has fate in His hands. And you go, I'm angry about that. I'm upset about that. I'm heartbroken about that. I feel loss. To me, that's a lack of Iman. Because if we trust in God, why do we trust in our desire more than His outcome, which is His desire? Right? Just simple logic. Simple logic. It's not to say it's an easy thing, but that's the beauty of it. And that's the whole point of worship, is to build that up. If it was so easy, then it would just be, you wouldn't have to have all these things that we have in our religion in terms of building up our Iman. But now you understand what worship is about. That's the real point of worship, is to build up that Iman. We can't divorce the two, because worship becomes a little bit rote and heavy and burdensome and almost meaningless when we don't tie it to the exercise of strengthening trust in God. And so in order for worship to work as a trust builder, the mind and the heart have to be activated. If you're praying and you're going up and down and your mind and heart are absent, it's a nice spiritual form of aerobics. But in order for it to be prayer, or true prayer, what does prayer mean? Let's go back to the Arabic. Salah is sila. It means a connection. If I had to translate certain words, just the way I talk about Iman as trust, not belief, not faith, I would talk about prayer as connection. Not, salah rather, is connection. That's the real translation of it. That's the most accurate and deserving translation of that word. Not prayer. If I translate salah, it's connection. Now, connection is the point. Prayer is the form. And that's what it means in Arabic. Salah, it's that connection. That's what it means in Arabic. So I'm not making things up here. Prayer is an English word, comes from French, comes from Latin, prière, So I don't have to use that word. I could, but really it's about the connection. So why is that important? Because you could pray and not be connected. Are you praying? If I have a phone and it has no reception, is it a phone? It's the connection that makes the phone a phone. And it's the connection that makes prayer prayer. So meaning, if you spend 2 rakahs and you really truly connect with God, you fulfill prayer. And if I spend 20 and I'm mindless, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of imams have said you get the credit for attempts and all that. I'm not saying don't do it. Well, let's talk about what really transforms, guys. Right? I'm not trying to be like a little mufti here. I don't do iftat, right? Listen to the muftis. But just logically, I'm telling you what works for me and what doesn't work for me, if it means anything to you. Like when you connect mentally and with your heart, it does transform you. And it does remind you there's a greater, more beautiful power. And that power is almighty. And it does make a change in how you see everything, including what's happening in the Middle East or in the subcontinent or all of these injustices around you. Because then you remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no power or might except by God. So all of these powerful forces around us are figments of power. They're mirages of power. They're not real power. I mean, think of ants running on the ground, right? And think of yourself, right? Well, what are the ants to you? You can just stomp them, right? Right? Like there's no power relationship. There's nothing unto God. You can't analogize unto Allah. But imagine go infinity in both directions, and that's Allah to humans. So Allah being Allah, what's happening around us? There's no comparison between that power and the power of God. Why does this power exist? It's delegated by God as a test to them and to us. That's all it is. But the power remains with God. It doesn't remain with any of us. When it's delegated as a test, if they abuse it, they lose, even if they win. Meaning they lose the akhirah, the real test, even if they win the battle, the war in this dunya. And if we pass the test, because we're also tested by that same power given to them, through sabr, and through resilience, and through resistance, and through falling back on our values, not imitating them to try to fight them at their own game, all the things that make you win. You win even if you lose. They lose even if they win. You win even if you lose, meaning even if you die off, like a lot of Gazans died off, they haven't really lost if they stood on their values the whole time, because that's the ultimate test. Do you understand? Who lost and who won between King Herod and John the Baptist, Yahya alayhi salam? Yahya alayhi salam was decapitated. I mean, that's the end of the story. That's pretty much the end of the story. Decapitated, right? And he did everything he was asked to do. He prayed, he trusted, he fasted, he was a Nabi. And the other guy was essentially a kafir, an arrogant person, the king. And he lived on after that until he died. And he lived well off, kind of like certain presidents and certain kings and certain people who are abusing others. And then one can go from a non-religious perspective, what's going on? This world is unjust. But this is where you remember, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, Allahu Akbar, God is greater. And then you remember, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ, always together. Why? Because God's power extends over that little gate called death. And if we think it ends there, then yes, there's a lot of injustice in the world. But if you understand it's a much larger picture, and that gate is only a transitional point, then you understand that Yahya has really won and Herod has really lost. Because Yahya lived and died on salam, salamun alayya yawma amutu yawma ahya, just like Isa. And the other guy lived in his own misery and own darkness and own confusion of arrogance and thinking his power, even though it was dedicated to him, delegated to him, just a little bit of it as a test, and he failed it. So back to the point here. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. We have the trust, but the second thing we have is the action, guys. And the action is critical. Mind you, the middle part is not there. What are the 3 spaces that humans express their culture and traditions in? All of their human inventiveness and creation. It's either thought, words, or action, right? Is there a third? Allah skips the middle one. That's interesting. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا. The talk in the middle is skipped. It's not to say that words don't matter. The Quran is words. I'm speaking words to you now. But words are a bridge. Because we can't communicate telepathically, but they're not really the point. They've never been the point. The point has always been the action rooted in faith, rooted in trust, rooted in values. And the words are just, so instead what we do as humans, we focus on the words most of the time. And you have all these halaqas and all these YouTube channels, and all these books and all these conversations, but very seldom do we switch into action. Let me give you an example. I tell all of my imam friends, I'm like, it's beautiful that you have a halaqah speaking for an hour about all the various beautiful traditions of the imams and their tafsir of how to help the poor and all of that. Great. And then what? We walk off with more knowledge, but the same inaction. Now we have even more responsibility and more likelihood to be accountable to God, because now we have more knowledge. That hasn't helped me. What if you give, out of your beautiful 1-hour lecture, 20 minutes at the end to open a soup kitchen in the back of that beautiful center and start to advertise for the poor and the vagabonds and whoever else in your area to come in and serve them and actually practice what we preach? Wouldn't that be a good form of ending the lecture on this matter, or even having more time for the action than the talk? Because guys, the talk, we have the information. We've had it forever. We've had it for a very long time. The fact that we are where we are, whether here or in the Muslim majority world, in terms of vulnerability, in terms of being easy targets, in terms of not being in our golden age, in terms of being abused and misused by others, in terms of abusing and misusing ourselves, can't come down to a lack of knowledge or information, because we have a lot of it, and we've had it for a very long time. We have to look elsewhere for the answer. And I think the answer is probably going to be in how we think about the material and what we do or don't do. So it goes back to how we really center our heart and our mind, because faith and trust comes from both these spaces, not just a heart thing. You got to intellectualize this stuff. And the Quran doesn't shy away from that. الَّذِينَ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ الَّذِينَ يَعْقِلُونَ الَّذِينَ يُبْصِرُونَ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Those who think, those who ponder, those who listen, those who see, those who have minds. It always addresses you through the faculty of your ability to discern. So if you have any tradition, Muslim or not, that tries to tell you to leave your discernment at the door as you enter into the religious space, because I have the answers for you, walk away. If anyone tells you don't ask questions, don't be critical, because that's a lack of faith or trust, walk away. It has to begin here, where we have to bring back the critical nature and the intellectual nature of a safe space, where we think through everything. Everything's on the table, nothing's off the table. Because your brains and your thoughts and Allah's hidayah through that is what brought you here, just like Ibrahim. And so don't ask me to leave what brought me here at the door. So that's where it begins. And then from there, inshallah, alhamdulillah, Allah has given you all the ability to, you have high intelligence, you have education, you come from good families, and you'll get to the right answers. I'm not here to give you the answers tonight. I'm here to say, here's my experience, here's what made it work for me, and we can have 20, 30 lectures and still not run out of things to say about this topic. But when we started off this work, we weren't in the media, we got into the media, we started slaying it in the media, we started changing the narrative, a lot of things happened, and I think it's important to understand that in our experience, it had to do with how we think about ourselves and the other. It wasn't just about doing the same old, same old. And what today seems normal to you didn't seem normal to your parents when we started doing it. It became normalized. You can normalize something that's not very normal. If you believe, if you have confidence, if you have leadership. It wasn't normal to vote. When I was your age, the conversation in most Islamic conferences is voting haram or halal? End of story. That was it. That was the debate. You don't hear that debate anymore today. Today you hear about, should it have been this candidate or that candidate in Illinois 9 or whatever, right? And so, great, that's a good debate. Even if we're still not united fully, now we're talking about mobilizing ourselves in the space that we're in civically in order to not be eaten alive. And so you can make further change in women's spaces, in justice spaces, in racial spaces, in economic disparity spaces, in Islamophobia spaces and hatred and bigotry spaces, you can make change. You can be profound. One person can make a change. As Rumi said, yes, there are many of us, and it seems sometimes like we're a drop in the ocean, but he also said, and yet remember, because of the power of God and the fact that he created you with his breath, you are an ocean in a drop. So each person is profound. Each person can make a huge difference. Working together, even more so. But it begins with understanding the beauty of this tradition, allowing yourself to explore it with guidelines, and then shifting into action and not laboring yourselves in only talk and halaqas and YouTube videos and writings and talk, right? We got to shift into action and make a difference. I'll leave it there, but that's really the point here for me, is the bridge is the bridge, but don't forget where it's supposed to take you. We have a little bit of time for questions and answers, inshallah. There's a lot going on here, guys. I know it's kind of all over the place, but I hope it made sense. How are you, Habib? Good to see you.
Hi, assalamu alaikum. So we did send a Slido link into the 1439 chat, so if you want to submit any of your questions anonymously, we can do that. If you would prefer to ask a question live, we'll take priority to any of those questions. So if anyone has a question they want to ask, yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu rahmatullah.
So I had a question on for us being armed with knowledge, and for those that are working in in the workplace, working in corporate America, are there some resources where we can understand what are our rights as Muslims within the workplace, so that we know that we're not facing injustice? Understanding like what are our rights as Americans and our freedom of religion, freedom of practice of religion. So having our own prayer space, etc., stuff like that, so that we know that we're not facing injustice within the workplace.
That's a great question. So, absolutely. First of all, you do have these rights. And second of all, there is a resource document, if you will, or platform that's on the Cair Chicago website that lists for you very clearly what your rights are and what your limitations are. And we can expound on that further. If there's a particular situation, we have a number you can call, you can consult with us, everything's free. So that resource is available for all young professionals and students at places of education, and sometimes they face the same issues as employees in places of employment. Salam.
My question to you was, what do you see as the area with the greatest need in terms of how you're talking about like the fight aspect of it? So if someone is in their, they just graduated college or they're like a young professional and they want to consider doing extra on the side or make a career change into something that the ummah would need the most, that would look for the most reward from Allah in this type of area, what would that be to you? Like what would they?
That's a great question, by the way. I would say narrative building, because I keep telling people the narrative is where it's at. And the narrative is defined as a set of messaging that sticks and builds a story that transforms how somebody